What's up, guys? I'm Old Painless, and today we are looking at FansToys FT15 Willis. And basically, as you can see, it's a third-party Masterpiece interpretation of Hound. Now, right off the bat, if you've paid attention to my channel, or if you're new here, I have reviewed Make Toys Gundog in the past, a couple months ago, and I have actually sold off that figure since then. So if you were looking for maybe a side-by-side comparison, I don't have that here, but I definitely have some thoughts on both figures. I'm definitely going to be talking about, how I feel about, each figure and how they represent the Hound character, and, and I'm definitely going to come to a conclusion here with you guys whether I made the right decision selling off Gundog in favor of FansToys Willis here instead. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and take a quick look at the packaging and the accessories. We won't dwell too long on that, and we're going to jump right into the figure so we can get some more hands-on impressions with them. So the packaging's pretty straightforward, very reminiscent of the other FansToys, boxes and whatnot. Nice painted rendition of the character there. And instead of the matte black box, we actually have a nice camo design. So, just worth kind of pointing out, it's not going to fit in exact with the other FansToys packaging out there. But it works, it gets the job done. And then we do have the rendition of the alt mode Jeep, as well as the character on the back, some text breakdown and all that fun stuff. But yeah, pretty nice overall. We do get our instruction book here, as well as our collector's card. So, good stuff. Actually comes with a sticker sheet too. Looks like maybe some license plate icons that you can put on there, like the Jeep logo and whatnot. I won't be using this, but just some nice options there in case you want to use it. A couple gun options too for the alt mode. This one's the more realistic of the two, which is kind of nice. All black finish, and it does have the peg here to actually pop onto the Jeep. The one really cool thing though is that this does have a hinge, and as you move the gun, this actual piston does work along with it. So just a nice little touch there, for realism for the alt mode. And then the other mountable gun option is this guy here. We have a hinge towards the base again, so you can kind of angle that. But this is much more in line with what the G1 design was for the back-mounted guns. Silver finish, looks pretty nice. It does have a peg here as well, so I believe this does fit into his hand, although it looks a little weird with this little black sort of hinged attachment on the bottom, so you can kind of fold it back if you want to, but not really a look that I'm going for. And you get a green painted, metallic painted finished gas can with a little clip here, so this can attach in both the vehicle and Jeep mode, although not quite as well as what Make Toys Gundogs had for storage options. A little cup holder here. It looks like maybe like a sculpted stick shift as well. This comes separately. It does pop into the Jeep mode. I don't really bother putting this on because unless I glue it into place, it's just going to pop out. But just some extra sculpted detail you can pop into the vehicle mode to make it a tad bit more complete, but kind of nice. A black clip here. Basically this is for attaching to the base of a shoulder rocket launcher. So this doesn't obviously store in bot mode, although I believe you can actually store this in the wheel, believe it or not. I'll take a peek at that with you guys to see if that's actually an option for storage. But basically, this is to allow you to mount the shoulder rocket launcher to the Jeep in alt mode. Otherwise, it just kind of sits there in the box. We do get a replacement head option. This is actually the original head sculpt that FansToys had shown off, but it got some backlash due to kind of the gauntness of the cheeks. And if you look at it from maybe a side angle, you can kind of see there that it is a little bit hollow along the jaw and cheek line there. But I think it actually looks pretty nice in person. I do actually like the white face as well, the white painted face and blue eyes. It looks very G1 accurate. It's actually a good head sculpt, and FansToys has gotten a lot of flack for their more organic head sculpts. I think this one actually succeeds pretty well. And then lastly, a translucent face or scuba mask for that one obscure G1 episode cartoon reference for when Hound went underwater. Why you need a scuba mask to go underwater? Because he's a robot? I don't know. But we'll show this off, and we'll also show off the other head sculpt in more detail, which actually ships with the robot. And here we have Willis in bot mode, and this is the preferred way that I like to show him off on my shelf. So he does have an additional gun accessory, which you can see tabs into his hand. Quite nice, very G1 accurate little silver painted pistol there. He does have the rocket launcher attachment too, which is pretty nice. Kind of a tight connection putting this in first, but once it's pushed in there, man, this thing's pretty solid. I mean, I can hold it up, no problem. And then lastly, just like Gundog, I do have this spare wheel attachment there on the back. Hangs on there pretty securely, no worries about that. So yeah, here we have Willis in all of his G1 Masterpiece glory. I think this is a really nice rendition of Hound. You know, color-wise, it's kind of a nice in-between in comparison to the two Make Toys versions, the toy and the tune. But it still looks very accurate to what we saw on the television screen. And I really like the paint details. You know, the yellow striping on the forearms, along the pelvis, you know, the little star there as well. Very clean, there's no overspray, just very well applied all the way around. And we got some nice details too, you know, like the winch system here on the front, all a nice crisp silver. The side view mirrors there, and some nice sort of orange and white details on that silver as well. Speaking of these mirrors, they do move. You can have them in an upward position if you want to for the bot mode. But the big thing to point out is that it is a new type of material. I believe on the prototype version that got passed around, these were breaking, but on the retail version they did revise these. They're more of a softer, more malleable plastic, so unless you're really stressing this and like yanking them in a direction beyond where they should be going, you know, I don't imagine these breaking at all. So they seem like a good... So it seems like a good change to the mold. You know, I'm glad they went ahead and made a modification there before releasing the figure. I will note, though, that these do feel a little bit loose. They just peg in underneath. You know, right there, that's smaller. Yeah, smaller, the two little pegs. So in case they do get loose on yours, I mean, you have an easy option there to kind of put some glue in if you had to secure that in place. Now, the head sculpt, I think, is really well done. This is the revised... and second head sculpt option. It comes pre-installed, but you can see the cheeks and jawline are a little bit more pronounced, you know, towards the base. So I think, for my own tastes, I think that this head sculpt is just a little bit more structurally sound for what I'm looking for. But I think both options are pretty good. I think really, you know, if you had a preference towards one or the other, you're going to be satisfied, you know, with either choice. For my taste, though, I think the silver just has a better shape to it, so that's the one I'll probably be sticking with, although I've swapped them back and forth, and I do like the white one as well. Speaking of which, it's a really simple process to swap them out. You literally just fold that off, or pull that off the mushroom peg there, and then they just basically slide, oops, back on into place. There we go. So, there he is with the white head attached. So I did actually read on the TFW boards that you can actually store this little attachment. So, you know, if you are going to use the rocket launcher in the alt mode and you don't want to leave this sitting around on a shelf to get lost, you can actually pop this inside the tire right there, the spare tire, and then clip that onto his back. So yeah, it's just a nice little touch, being able to store that little peg hole there. For me, you know, if I can't incorporate an accessory, you know, in both modes, then typically they get left in a box or a shelf. You know, just because I don't want to be losing different parts and pieces for a figure. So being able to store that's just a nice little touch right there. That's one area I do think that Gundog from Make Toys does succeed a little bit better than what FansToys presents here. They're able to really integrate a lot of different accessories and components into both forms, but we'll touch on that a little bit more. And I am trying to show off this little scuba mask. It's the first time actually trying to put this on this head sculpt, and mine really was being a pain in the butt. That really did not want to stick on there. In fact, I think if I really nudge it, it's going to pop right off. Maybe it's a better fit on the silver face, I'm not sure, but there's proof of concept. You know, you can see the scuba mask put on the head sculpt. So pretty cool. In terms of articulation, we do get a movable rocket launcher, no left or right motion. Maybe we can get some shapeways accessories to kind of flesh that out a bit more so we can get some more posability. Head is on a swiveled hinge, as we already saw when we popped it off, but you do get some upward motion, not a lot, but we do get some, and you do get left and right, a full 360. As you can see, this does pop a little bit of mine. I'm not sure if this is actually how it came. I think I kind of sheared off this peg a little bit during the transformation, so mine typically doesn't really lock into place, but when it's in this position, unless I'm really moving the head, I mean, it stays nice and tight right there. But just something to be aware of in case you're really forcing those different joints and stuff. Again, I don't know if I sheared that off, but just it's something that you might have to sort of adjust as you go. In terms of shoulder articulation, you get nice upward motion. It's on a universal here. It does rotate full 360. Bicep swivels, elbow bend about 90 degrees, which works pretty well. Wrist swivel, single pinned hinge for the hand, so you get the clump of the 4 fingers sculpted there. Works pretty well. All typical Masterpiece stuff right there. We do get a pretty tight waist swivel. Fairly limited hip articulation. It doesn't get you much further forward than that, which is kind of a bummer, but it still works pretty well. Back's a bit better, and then outward motion gets you the full Van Damme split right there. Integrated upper thigh swivels, so that works out pretty well. And you do get a double jointed knee. You get way more than, well, maybe not way more, but you do get more than 90 degrees, which works out pretty well. And then for feet articulation, these are really nice. Huge ankle rocker. You do get some forward and backwards motion as well for the entirety of the foot, and then you do get some toe bend there as well. So plenty of articulation. I mean, anything that you'd really want this figure to do pose-wise, it can pretty much do. So very nice. There have been some complaints with some people's figures, the feet being a bit loose. It's kind of an odd joint that this rocker is attached to. It basically swivels along that connection right there. If it got really loose, you can basically pop 3 screws out and sort of separate this lower leg and then retighten the screw on the inside. Mine actually feel pretty good though, so I'm not really going to mess around too much with that. Although it does have a slight tendency to lean backwards, he still feels really stable on his feet because there is a nice weightiness, a bit of die cast in the feet area. So it does tend to lean a tiny bit, as you can see. Yeah, but it's really just super slight because what ends up happening is that the wheels kind of bump into these back seats, so it kind of creates an additional point of stability there. So I'm not too worried about it myself, but there is a way to get in there in case you need to tighten some stuff up. What I have noticed though is that this toe is really nice. It's well toleranced. This one is much looser, and there is a screw here which you can tighten up, and it does work, but it's more of a temporary fix because as you kind of manipulate this joint, that tends to loosen that screw up quite a bit. So seems to be that issue where FansToys has problems just getting proper tolerances. The feet, for the most part, and legs work pretty well on my figure, but just be aware that you may have, your results may vary. You may have some looser connections than what I'm showing here. But this is a production copy, so it's not anything pre-production or sample. This is right from a shop, so it should be a pretty good representation of what you're going to get yourself. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think this is a really successful rendition of Hound. I'm a huge fan of just the aesthetics that they went for here, and I suppose this is a good time to talk about differences in terms of looks between this and Gundog. To me, this really just captures the G1 aesthetic so much better than what Gundog did, or Make Toys did with their rendition. And a lot of it has to do with just a more elegant, streamlined design. I feel like Make Toys, they kind of went more along the route of Masterpiece, with maybe a slight bit more toy influence. I think that's fair to say. You know, they had the exterior wheels on their version, which this cleans up really nice and really smart with this hinge system here. They had a much bulkier front toe. This one, just for me, just reads G1. You know, looking at it head on, you know, maybe from the side it is a bit of a boat shoe here. It's a bit bulky, but from head on, man, like this really looks like a nice, clean rendition of the lower leg that we saw from the cartoon. It's pretty impressive, actually. And you do even get some nice paint details down there as well. I think the additional sort of more streamlined upper thigh here looks so much better too versus what we saw on Gundog. Again, I kind of complained on my Gundog video having really bulky, you know, thighs. He looked like he hadn't skipped leg day or squats. You know, he's like a big powerlifter kind of hound rendition, and he looked really good. But this just feels like more like the hound from the cartoon to me. Yeah, I mean, I think sculpturally, FansToys really nailed this figure. And you know, I do buy a lot of the official Masterpiece figures and stuff. I honestly don't know what Takara could really do to sort of top this. You know, this really is a great rendition of the character, and I mean, it really feels like Masterpiece to me. Alright, well, Willis is pretty clearly a success in bot mode, but I want to get this guy transformed now into his Jeep so we can check out that mode as well. We'll take it in a montage, and I'm going to sort of slow down in certain areas, like in the shoulder and the chest assembly, because those seem to be sort of a trouble area for a lot of folks, and we'll try to get that demonstrated as best as possible, so we have a better understanding how to manipulate this figure. But yeah, let's go ahead and get this sucker transformed. And by the way, no more elevator music. A lot of people had voiced their opinion on that, so yeah, we'll try a couple videos without the additional music. So stick with me, we'll get this guy transformed and we'll check out that Jeep mode. Alright, so we're going to pop off the accessories. Push in the fists. Lower these wheel wells. They slide along a track. Just be careful. It's, you know, want to make sure you're not damaging these side view mirrors. Now, this section here it's not really illustrated well in the instructions, but they sort of indicate the push forward in on this grill to sort of loosen this up. Again, I don't know if I sheared off this peg. I don't know if it's actually meant to be this loose. I don't recall it being this loose. Luckily for me, I can just basically pop this up out of the way, and that actually frees up this section altogether. If not, maybe apply some pressure on the back, but you basically want to loosen up this portion, and then that's going to allow you to then get access to pull this out. So it's going to unpeg from the torso right there. But without that really being unlocked via that peg right there, this really can't move very well. So just do your best. I don't really have the best way to do it, but I think that's all you have to do in this case, for me at least. If this actually pops off, by the way, I've had this front grille pop off. It's basically on a metal rod on the inside, so it just pops right back on, so no worries about that. And we're going to take care of the legs first. So first thing, take advantage of the rocker, pull that out, and flip the seat all the way around like so. And then we can pop open the wheels and click them into place. Coming down to the foot, extend this panel completely, and this portion here will just rock forward like that. Accordion in the thigh into the lower leg. There is a peg hole here and a peg there. It kind of gets you an idea of where you want that peg to kind of rotate into. And leave this section loose for right now, because you want to be able to have access to this later on when securing. So just repeat this. This is the easy part of the transformation. Alright, so with both the legs kind of loosely put into place here, make sure you're extending these bottom portions downwards. And these sections in here, these lower sections, kind of sit at odd angles, but the more I've transformed it, the more they kind of just naturally slide into place now. If they're not flush or like level with the rest of the this trunk space, just kind of hold here and press down to get that nice and flat. But once you have that done, there's a series of pegs. Just kind of get this all lined up, and you can push together just like so. And again, you can leave these sections loose for now. But that is the lower body done. And it's a little bit loose here. We can kind of focus on that later on to kind of condense things, to maybe clean that up. Alright, now this is the more tricky section. We're going to try our best here to get this on camera to show you. One of the keys is that this section in here needs to be perpendicular like this in order for the some of these panels to kind of fold around. And that's because this section kind of is rotated up, which can obscure some of these other sections. So I typically sort of hold it in hand like this, just so I can kind of keep things level, and then I manipulate the other parts and pieces as I need to. But we'll worry about that as we get there. Alright, so coming up to here, what we want to do is make sure this is kind of pushed up and out of the way, and do your best. What you want to do is have the shoulder joint rotated so that the underside is kind of facing upwards. And once you have that done, you can unfold one wheel and leave it sort of at a 45-degree angle like this. And what we're going to do, and again, be careful of those little pieces there for the wheel well. What we want to do is, while we have it just like that, we're going to rotate the arm through. And if you notice, having the shoulder joint rotated just like this gives us the perfect clearance to get this arm through the body right there. Once you have it in this position, extend that, and then you can kind of rotate this shoulder joint up, which works out perfect because the arm has to be upwards anyway. And then we'll just fold this inner joint downwards like that. So this actual internal hinge here rotates down 90 degrees. And then once you have this into position, rotate the arm 180 so the elbow joint is facing up, and we can basically bend the elbow and then get that sort of situated temporarily. Maybe a different angle here. Rotate this up 45 degrees. Make sure this body is still perpendicular. Elbow joint, armpit joint or shoulder joint sort of facing this way. And then fold this through, extend the wheel, and get this guy pushed through as well. So once you kind of have it past the tire, then you can fold this shoulder joint upwards, which makes it really easy. But you can see how simple. This is sort of a trouble area. A lot of the people that had the pre-production copies that didn't have the instructions to transform this figure were having a hard time kind of managing the clearances and stuff, and I completely understand why, because the shoulders just have to be a very specific orientation for this to really work properly. But again, fold that joint down, rotate so the elbow is facing towards the roof of the car, bend your elbows 90 degrees. And before we go any further, what we want to do here is get this head joint pushed backwards and through. This is one of the tricky parts for me. This peg is pretty stiff. It's a sort of I think it's a metal peg actually, which goes into this plastic piece. So this is one of the trouble sections that people have been having, and the best suggestion I can recommend here is have this peg sort of underneath the grill section here, and then get your arms kind of positioned loosely like this, because you need to have them sort of pre-lined up like that. There we go. And what we kind of want to do is a combination of pushing this down so this lines up flush, and then you get these arms pushed up as well so they line up with those two prongs there. There we go. So that actually plugs in, secures everything. And the tricky thing here is you don't want to go past this point, because once you do, then it's a pain in the ass to get that peg pushed back down. So I try to treat this really gently There we go. Kind of just lock that peg into place. And if you end up sort of pushing too hard and this peg shoots up past this grill section, then it's really tough. You might be able to push it back down by putting direct pressure. I'm a little worried about doing that just because you're putting a lot of pressure on metal, on plastic. So what I usually end up doing is I just sort of unpeg this, loosen the arms back up, and just try one more time. And I keep my thumb on this section, so as I push, it kind of restrains this joint from pushing too far upwards. Little long-winded explanation, but just sort of understanding how to get those components to sort of fold in on each other properly. You're going to save yourself a lot of trouble and headaches there. So next step here is getting the bodies condensed. So we'll slide this piece up into that channel, and then basically it's going to kind of condense together. Oops. And then there's a sort of a slot here which is going to slide right into this little channel right there, and that's going to lock the body together just like so. And again, be careful of these. There. Last step, be careful of the side view mirrors, but pop these up, and then these will basically just tab right into place to secure those wheel wells together. And you can put the windshield up as well. There we have FansToys Willis, aka Hound, in Jeep mode. And this is a pretty killer Jeep. I'm a big fan of this. I think this, as well as Gundog, both look really nice. They're really solid representations of the Army Jeep vehicle. I can't really speak to scale and whether or not like one was more accurate than the other. They both felt pretty similar. But in terms of just overall sort of look and feel, lots of die cast, lots of high gloss sort of metallic flecked paint. It looks really good. Rubber wheels, they feel very nice. Rolls like a champ. The little yellow detailing around the vehicle looks very crisp as well. And again, these, very happy with the material that they chose for these. May not be secured as best as possible, but again, it's an easy fix in case these pop out. More importantly, though, that these don't feel like they're going to break on me unless you really stressed it in the wrong direction. But I think in terms of just a military Jeep, I mean, this looks really good. Maybe a little sloppy underneath, you know, some of the robot parts and stuff kind of popping up through there. But I think for the most part, this is a pretty clean representation of Hound. Now, this looks a little bit gappy. No matter what I really do to sort of press this together, it doesn't quite get all the little nooks and crannies pushed all the way in, but it still cleans up really well. I like some of those sculpted details on there, you know, for the trunk, and again the painted taillights and stuff there as well. One quick note, sometimes these little sort of rectangular pieces here, I've had these pop off during transformation. They're only held on by friction, they're not glued into place. So if they do pop off, just pop them right back on. No big deal. But really nice. Even the gas cap there is painted silver, and it's not present on the other side, so just little nice attentions to detail, which I dig. And even like, this is actually a really cool detail I just noticed. It's a very clean figure. Like, look at the angle of this windshield, and there's a slight sculpted curved detail coming along the side here, which not only goes along this panel, but goes along the elbow or the arm panel here as well. And there's even a little notch there on the hood. So there's a lot of sculpted detail that is nice continuous arc all the way through. Even line detailing going from this arm panel into the hood area here as well. So good attention to detail, nice sculpted quality throughout that figure and throughout this vehicle. And again, we did mention the gun accessories. You can pick either or. There's two of the peg holes there, so these fit on nice and secure. And alternatively, you can basically pop this on to the rocket launcher and, you know, put this in conjunction with one of the two guns or by itself. Completely up to you, but that's an option. And then we do have the spare tire, which can loop onto the back, as well as a gas can. Oops. I do find that you can basically get them both into place. They just don't really seem to fit very well together or securely. So, and then I mentioned this little cup holder guy that can pop in. There's two little holes in there. Not really a lot of light getting in here, unfortunately, but they can basically secure into place there. Again, I don't really bother with this, but it is sort of a nice little touch in case you want to. And just for a quick size comparison, here we have Willis with an MP side swipe. So you can see he does look pretty good. I mean, I think it actually scales pretty well together. Obviously, I'm not a car enthusiast. I don't really know, especially military Jeeps and vehicles, you know, how well or not these would scale together. But it's passable. I mean, I think this can work, obviously, on an MP shelf. Alright guys, so final thoughts on FansToys Willis, aka Hound. You know, it's not a perfect figure. You know, we kind of pointed out the vehicle mode, it looks a little bit gappy in some areas, although I think overall it's pretty clean. The transformation is less than intuitive, kind of has some overcomplication of certain parts, especially that torso. Although, to be fair, I think once you kind of figure out the orientation and how to sort of manipulate the arms and stuff, it makes a lot more sense when you get it in hand. But again, it's not sort of as smooth as like a Takara Masterpiece transformation, that's for sure. It also seems to have a case of some of those FansToys tolerance tuning issues that they're kind of known for. Ankles and toes being a bit loose, but the elbows being a bit stiff. You know, those are just kind of those little touches that just lack a little bit of polish, but it's kind of minor when you get down to it. The other real main thing for me, too, is just that the head pivot joint. You know, if you gotta be careful with that, those pegs, the peg to rotate that section, it's really tight. Toy Dojo on their Facebook, they actually posted a pretty good sort of visual sort of tutorial in terms of how to manipulate that joint when you're doing the transformation. It helped me a little bit. It still didn't resolve all the issues I had. Just be careful with it, you know. I think that's probably really the main problem area, because I think the arm transformation is really simple once you know sort of the order and how to fold things to get things compressed or decompressed as you need. But with that being said, you know, despite that maybe lack of intuitiveness and maybe some of the tolerance problems, man, he looks so good with Masterpiece and third-party MP. I mean, to me, there is no denying that, you know, that this is not a Masterpiece Hound. You know, I hope Takara takes a stab at this eventually. You know, they're definitely cranking out more official Masterpiece products, but I am 100% happy and content with this as a Masterpiece stand-in figure. I mean, it feels fantastic. The paint apps are super clean. There's a nice glossy green polished metallic flecked finish across the entire figure. It has that FansToys dense plastic and weightiness to it as well. I mean, this guy, Sphinx, was my favorite Masterpiece of last year. You know, I've gotten Stomp, Forager, this guy, and some other figures this year, and he's definitely towards the top. Simply one of the most impressive Masterpiece carbots in my collection, whether it be third-party or official. You know, I pretty much put these two on par with each other in that regard. Very happy with this purchase. Now, a big question is going to be, should you buy this or Gundog? It's really going to come down to personal preference when you get down to it, in terms of aesthetics more than anything. Gundog is a stellar figure by Make Toys. If you prefer the sort of hybrid Masterpiece toy look of Gundog, or maybe the bigger, more bulkier presentation of him, then maybe that's the way you go. If you're looking for more of, I think, an off-the-screen presentation, though, I would go Willis. I think this looks like it stepped off the TV screen to me. And the quality is about on par with both, and as well as the weight and plastic materials and everything else. I do think Gundog has a little bit more intuitive and smoother transformation. Things kind of flow a bit more natural with that sort of transformation. I also do prefer how Make Toys integrated all the weapon and accessory storage. It feels a bit more elegant versus having like big sort of black extension pieces on FansToys, which, Again, you can fold them up to have them hold the weapon, but then you can't use stuff like this, you know, in the bot mode. So, I don't know. Again, these are definitely nice perks. I like this as an alt mode option. There's nothing bad about having this as a choice to use, but more than likely this is going to sit in the box for me because I like to have my accessories stored on both formats as best as possible. Yeah, so I mean, really, if you already own Gundog, you just have to ask yourself, do you like that aesthetic? For me, though, this is undeniably a Masterpiece Hound. Gundog just felt a bit more maybe toy-influenced, which is great, just not the aesthetic that I want on my shelf. I think Willis here really fits the bill in that regard. Guys, thanks so much for watching. I have a new sort of recording system now. I'm actually trying some different stuff out. Hoping that this video looks as good as the previous couple ones I've been putting out. Let me know in the comments if you think the video quality is as smooth. The reason being is this is the third option I'm trying out now, and part of the reason why I've been sort of cutting back on video production and putting out content for you guys is it's very time consuming with the previous ways I was recording and producing video content. This is actually 1,000 times easier and much faster of a process. So I'm hoping this solution that I'm using for Willis today for the first time is going to produce the quality that I'm looking for. If it's noticeably lower, though, than what I've had previously, then I may go back or look for some other solutions. But, yeah, give me some feedback and let me know what you think. Because if this does look good and you're happy with this quality, then it's going to make my life a lot easier in terms of getting more content and more videos up on the site for you, up on my YouTube channel. But thanks so much for watching. Always appreciate when you guys check out my content. Yeah, leave some comments. Let me know what you think about Willis. I think he's my Masterpiece Hound, though. Have a great day, guys.